Let me ask a question. Why are we here? We can suggest three things. We're here to pray. We are here to listen to God through the Bible. And we are here, as St. Paul said, to sing hymns and psalms and spiritual songs. Put together, that is worship. Especially when our intentions are right. Today is different. We're here to worship God, yes, but we're also here to remember. Remembering makes us what we are. Over the course of 6 years, I saw my father disappear as his dementia caused him to forget who I was and to forget who he was. What has happened in the past makes a difference to what's happening now and what will happen in the future. We need to remember, and we need to remember especially those times when powerful, generally older people have sent younger people into battle, and those younger people either haven't come back at all or have come back dead or permanently injured or suffering from what we used to call shell shock, we now call post-traumatic stress disorder. Remembering, bothering to remember, confers value. It says those who died, those who had their lives taken from them, mattered then and matter still. If we forget, we may have to repeat the whole dismal process. The American writer Mark Twain once said, "History never repeats itself, but it does rhyme often." A modern poet, Steve Turner, said simply and strongly, "History repeats itself, has to. No one listens." I was born early in the Second World War. And I can still remember bits of it because it went on for a further 4 years. The enemy tried to kill me. I'm not that important, but a V1 flying bomb landed at the back of my garden and brought the ceiling down on my bed. Missed. My dad was away at the other end of the country teaching other young men how to kill. War does that. It divides families and sometimes destroys them. And this is what is happening in Ukraine right now. Tens of thousands of Ukrainian and Russian families have been seriously hurt. So at this point, let's remember what Jesus said. When you hear of wars and insurrections, do not be terrified. He was talking to his followers and telling them to trust God. He still does. Today, he's using me to do the same. Tell you to trust God. The important thing to take home today is that God is faithful and he can be trusted. But let's go back to the start of the reading. The disciples all came from villages not a great deal bigger than, say, Dengi, 130 kilometers away from Jerusalem. They were gobsmacked by the temple. There was room for 5,000 people to worship all at once. There were jewels and gold everywhere. It had the best of marble. Some people understood that although it was supposed to be about the glory of God, King Herod so-called the Great, built it for his own glory. The people who ran it had become greedy, so they were happy for an old lady to put into the collecting box everything she had, perhaps 20 pence, without helping her. Jesus knew that he had been chosen by God to make God's rule become fully present on earth. The earth was too small for both the temple as it was and God's fully present rule. So if Jesus was right, the temple had to go. And it did. St. Luke wrote this about 15 years after the temple was destroyed. The disciples didn't understand. They wanted to know when this was happening. They should have asked why. Especially when a few days later Jesus' enemies caught him and killed him. Jesus refused to put a date on the temple's destruction. He just pointed to God. Don't be terrified. Even though people would fear these northern yokels and pursue them and kill them for not keeping the rules. What mattered was not knowing all the answers. What mattered was being faithful. The Romans who occupied the Holy Land killed Jesus. They went on to destroy the temple and tried to destroy the church that developed over the next 200 years. God's rule takes time to take root because God is not a bully. Unfortunately, our world still has bullies who rule. They use terror to keep their people in order. They use force to stop protests. That sort of rule caused 2 world wars and more than 20 wars involving Britain since. So today, let's remember. Let's remember those whose lives were taken from them. Let's remember those who lost their lives in battle and those who lost their lives as civilians at home. Let's remember and care for the millions of refugees still on the move, trying to find a safe home. And let's remember Jesus, who blesses peacemakers, who offers us himself, and who promises, I am with you always to the end of the age.